Today, we're diving deep into a really insidious form of psychological manipulation. It's a dark strategy that literally turns your own sense of self-worth against you. We're talking about insecurity farming.
Have you ever felt this? You are confident, you know you're good at what you do, and yet one person, the controller, seems to have this uncanny ability to say the exact thing that triggers a sudden, just debilitating wave of self-doubt. Why does your mind immediately seize up at their words? Well, this isn't just a feeling. This is the dark psychological paradox of insecurity farming, and it's a long-term, calculated erosion of your confidence.
All right, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with that paradox of self-doubt. Then we'll define the strategy of insecurity farming and break down its three-stage mechanism. After that, we'll get into the manipulator's motives, and most importantly, we are going to arm you with a solid defense to help you reclaim your ground.
So let's start right there, with that confusing, gut-wrenching feeling. You know the one, that moment when a single comment from a specific person can totally derail your confidence for the rest of the day. It feels like a personal failure, doesn't it? Like some kind of weakness inside of you. But here is the most crucial point I want you to take away. This isn't about you being weak, not at all. It's about them being strategic.
That wave of inadequacy, that sudden mental freeze where you just can't think straight, that is not a random emotional event. It is the intended result. It's the carefully cultivated effect of a long-term strategy of cognitive erosion. The name for this tactic, as we've said, is insecurity farming. And that horrible feeling? Well, that feeling is the goal.
So, what exactly is insecurity farming? Well, the name is just chillingly accurate because it literally treats a person's self-esteem like a field, something to be cultivated purely for the manipulator's benefit. This isn't just random cruelty. It's about manufacturing a very specific outcome, your compliance and their control.
Okay, so here's the formal definition. Insecurity farming is a long-term cognitive erosion tactic used to create perpetual fragility in a target. Now let's translate that. The whole point is to make your own internal self-perception so unstable that you become dependent on the controller for validation. And that dependency, that's what guarantees your compliance. It's a signature method you'll often see linked with narcissistic or even psychopathic traits, because it really relies on that covert control and a profound lack of empathy.
So how does this farmer actually prepare the ground? Well, it's a very systematic four-phase process. First, they have to identify your core insecurity. They get close, they build rapport, all to learn what you fear most. Maybe it's not being smart enough, not being lovable, not fitting in. That fear becomes their strategic resource. Then they start planting seeds of doubt with little low-level critiques. Third, and this is key, they allow for a dormancy period, just letting those seeds take root in your mind. And finally, once all that groundwork is laid, they have guaranteed the future harvest, the ability to trigger your self-doubt on command.
And let's be absolutely crystal clear about the endgame here. The ultimate goal is one thing and one thing only: control, achieved via manufactured fragility. It's about systematically breaking down your trust in yourself so that you are always just one specific phrase, one targeted comment away from a total collapse of confidence. This gives the manipulator guaranteed, on-demand access to power and control over your actions.
All right, now we get to the absolute core of this explainer, the active mechanism itself. How does this whole process actually work in real time? Well, it unfolds in three pretty distinct stages, and they're perfectly captured by that farming metaphor: seed, cultivate, and harvest.
Think of it like a pipeline or an assembly line for doubt. It all begins with seed planting. That's the injection of these tiny little critiques. This then leads to the cultivation phase, where you unconsciously start to internalize all that doubt. And then finally, the manipulator cashes in with the strategic harvest. That's the big power play that's built on all that cultivated fragility.
Let's look a little closer at seed planting, because this is the foundation of the whole thing. We're not talking about big, obvious attacks. No, these are micro-critiques. They are subtle, they're frequent, and they are always deniable. You know the kind of thing I'm talking about. Comments like, "Oh, that was a brave choice for your presentation," or "Wow, you handle stress so much better than you used to." They almost sound like compliments, but they've got that little sting, right? And because they're so small, they sneak right past your rational defenses. I mean, you can't really argue against them without looking hypersensitive, but they are frequent, they are laser targeted at that core insecurity they found earlier, and they accumulate over time like a steady, slow drip of poison. And this leads directly into the cultivation phase. And this is the really insidious part, because this is where you start doing the manipulator's work for them. After you've heard enough of these little micro-critiques about, say, your competence, you start to unconsciously self-monitor. You second-guess your own work. You over-prepare for even simple tasks. You lie awake at night ruminating on past mistakes. You are pouring immense mental and emotional energy into fixing a flaw that was planted there. This is how the fragility gets internalized, and it just eats away at your independent sense of self-worth from the inside out.
And then comes the harvest. This is the power play. This is the moment they've been waiting for. After weeks, months, sometimes even years of all this seeding and cultivation, the manipulator needs something from you. Maybe they want you to accept their terrible behavior, or give up a resource, or just back down from a boundary you've set. They don't need to argue with you. They don't need to persuade you. All they have to do is deliver one single, high-impact criticism aimed directly at that well-tended insecurity. And because all that groundwork is already laid, that one comment triggers an overwhelming, crushing surge of internal doubt and shame. Your mind just seizes up, and compliance becomes the fastest way to make that awful feeling stop. The harvest is, at that point, guaranteed.
Okay, so the big question is, why? Why would somebody do this? Why put in all this effort just to make someone else feel terrible? Well, let's get into the psychology behind it, because understanding the motive is so key to recognizing the dynamic. What you're seeing here is a toxic collision between the controller's deep-seated needs and the target's specific vulnerabilities.
Let's break this down. On the controller's side, the motivation is all about future-proof control. This isn't just about winning one argument, it's about building a system that guarantees compliance forever. The shame and self-doubt they trigger in you gives them an intense hit of what psychologists call narcissistic supply. Now, on the target side, the vulnerability is often a dependency on external validation for their self-worth, and maybe a generalized fear of failure. The manipulator knows this, and they exploit this need, making themselves the one and only judge of your value. Your compliance is ultimately driven by that desperate desire to stop the painful feeling of self-doubt that they are so incredibly skilled at creating.
Okay, enough about them. Let's talk about you. This right here is the most important part of our explainer, because knowing the pattern is one thing, but breaking it is everything. So, how do you defend yourself? Well, the key, the absolute secret, is to shift your focus from that confusing subjective feeling of doubt to the hard reality of objective data.
There are three primary tools of defense, and I promise you, they are incredibly powerful when you use them together. First, we have the micro-critique journal. Second, the external validation anchor. And third, the conscious, deliberate act of refusing the emotional harvest. Let's break each one down.
Okay, tool number one might sound a little tedious at first, but trust me on this, it is an absolute game changer. The micro-critique journal. This is your data collection phase. Your mission is to meticulously document every single piece of deniable criticism, every backhanded compliment. Write down the date, the time, the exact words they used, and the context. At first, each entry is going to seem small, maybe even petty, but over time, a pattern will emerge that is so clear it will be impossible to deny.
And here's why this simple act is so powerful. It's because it converts that vague, horrible feeling of subjective doubt into objective, cold, hard data. You are no longer just feeling like you're being undermined, you have a logbook of evidence that proves it. This externalizes the manipulation. It takes it out of your head, where it can make you feel crazy, and puts it down on paper, where you can finally see it for the calculated strategy it really is.
Next up are your active, in-the-moment defense mechanisms. The first is what we call the external validation anchor. This means that the moment a seed of doubt is planted, you immediately go to a trusted, unbiased source, a friend, a mentor, a colleague you respect, and you get a reality check. You ask them, hey, can you just take a look at this report? Am I missing something here? This neutralizes the poison before it has a chance to take root. The second part is the refusal. When that high-impact harvest attack comes, you must consciously, deliberately refuse to get sucked into the internal debate about your self-worth. You recognize the tactic for what it is.
I want you to burn this sentence into your brain. This becomes your internal mantra, your mental firewall. The moment you feel that familiar, sickening surge of shame, you tell yourself, this is a strategic harvest. I will not debate my core worth right now. This simple statement creates just enough mental distance. It allows you to separate the emotional attack from whatever factual demand is being made, and it lets you respond only to the facts, denying the manipulator their emotional payoff.
And this brings us to our final section, reclaiming your factual worth. Because really, the entire strategy of insecurity farming relies on one thing: you believing their subjective, poisonous narrative over your own objective reality. Breaking the cycle means taking that power back.
So let's bring it all home. What have we learned today? We've learned that insecurity farming is the calculated strategy of how they plant doubts, of how they strategically place these little bits of poison so that when they need it most, they can harvest power. It is never a random act of cruelty. It is always, always a purposeful move designed to keep you compliant and keep them in control.
And now you know the pattern. You can see the formula. It starts with the seed planting of those sneaky micro-critiques. That forces the internal cultivation of doubt, which is then weaponized for the strategic harvest, guaranteeing your compliance when the stakes are high.
But here's the most crucial point of all. Awareness breaks the loop. Just by understanding the mechanism, you rob it of its covert power. The micro-critique journal shows you the pattern. The external validation anchor grounds you in reality, and together they give you the power to reclaim your self-worth and render their entire farm unproductive. Because ultimately, the farm only works if you tend to the seeds that they plant. The moment you stop watering their doubts and you start asserting your own factual worth, the soil becomes barren, the farm becomes unproductive. The power dynamic shifts instantly. So the question isn't whether they will ever stop farming. The real question is, how will you reclaim your ground?